Hi, I'm Elizabeth, along with Story at the Radford Public Library, and we're here to tell you what's new in books. And one of the books that I have to review for you today is a new book. It's a new adult fiction that I've just read, and that title is When the Stars Go Dark. It's written by Paula McClain, and it came out in April of this year. And before I tell you too much about this one, I just want to show you a few of her other titles. You have likely heard of her before. Let's see if I can even this up here. She wrote Circling the Sun, which I've read and really enjoyed. She also wrote Love and Ruin. I haven't read that, but I like the title. And the one that she's probably best known for at this point is The Paris Wife, which came out in 2011 and is an historical fiction about Ernest Hemingway's first wife, who was Hadley Richardson. And she did this really cool thing where she fictionalizes the lives of real people, such as Hadley Richardson. And that technique in this book is also used in her newest one, which is When the Stars Go Dark. And this is about, it's set in the 90s in Mendocino, California, and it's around the time that there are young girls being abducted or disappearing. And there are several cases that are referenced in this book, which is a fiction, but those were real life kidnappings. Like, you might recognize Polly Klaas's name as being one of the victims truly existed, and she is written into this story as well. So this is about main characters Anna Hart, and she's a fierce heroine. She is a detective for missing persons. She's very committed to that job, very devoted to it. But when the story opens, we know as the reader something terrible and tragic has happened in her personal life. We just don't know what. There are lots of subtle hints, and we know that she's left feeling really ashamed and guilty and quite wrecked over whatever has happened. So she leaves her husband and her job, goes away to Mendocino to be alone. And this is her hometown where she grew up, but her childhood was quite traumatic in terms of being bounced around from foster home to foster home, having a difficult family life, until she is finally taken in by a very nice couple who raise her. But there are some elements of tragedy there. So she's had a tough time, and she arrives in Mendocino and is trying to find some peace. What happens instead is abductions begin, very public ones begin happening around her. One abduction is for the daughter of a very well-known Hollywood star, basically, and so there's a lot of attention on it, and she decides to help the sheriff, who was a friend of hers from high school, with these cases to see if perhaps they are linked or related in any way. And as she's doing this, she's also dealing with this tragedy that we, the reader, don't quite know what happened, and then delving into things that happened in her childhood, including there being a missing high school student that was a friend of hers who disappeared and was later found dead. So lots of darkness in this story for certain. The violence isn't gratuitous, but the themes are certainly very hard. There's a lot about trauma. There's a lot of really interesting perspectives on psychology of trauma, and what happens to those victims, as well as what might be going on with the person or persons who are abducting these girls. And just a little bit from Kirkus, they reviewed this book and they called it a muted yet thrilling, multi-layered mystery enriched by keen psychological and emotional insight. So if that sounds like anything you might enjoy, I highly recommend it. I found it to be very compelling to read, and certainly unsettling and difficult, but also very well done and thought-provoking. I encourage you to check out Paula McClain's website, which is paulamcclain.com. And also, if you don't normally read the acknowledgments, I would suggest that you read the acknowledgments in this book, because she tells you a lot about why she was personally inspired to write this story. And I feel like she shares a lot about herself, and not the least of which her her youth, her childhood growing up, she was also bounced from foster home to foster home. And so you'll find some similarities in childhood experiences and traumas between the author and her character, Anna Hart, in this story. So thank you so much for listening to What's New in Books at the Radford Public Library. We hope to see you soon. Keep reading and take care.